Recognizing the member for Peace River North.
Thank you very much, Honourable Speaker. I rise in the House this morning to shed light on an issue of great importance to the fabrics of all of our communities. This past week, Glacier Media announced that it would be shutting down two long-standing newspapers in the Northeast, the Alaska Highway News and the Dawson Creek Mirror. This comes shortly after the Fort Nelson News announced that it would be closing its doors just last month. The Dawson Creek Mirror was founded in 1930 and the Peace River Block News, and the Alaska Highway first opened its doors in 1943, and the Fort Nelson News opened their doors in 1959. A legacy certainly has ended. These papers have played a crucial role in the Northeast by relaying pivotal information and connecting all of our communities. Yet these closures are just the latest trend in newspapers that are closing their doors to communities across the province. In fact, announced just earlier this week, Kamloops this week will be closing their doors as well. Local newspapers have long been the pillars of our communities, serving as watchdogs, storytellers, and connectors. They have provided us with the information that we need to be informed citizens, the stories that make our neighborhoods unique, the forms of dialogue that make us engaged participants in our democracy. Yet, across British Columbia, newspapers are closing doors one by one, and this trend has brought a cascade of devastating consequences that ripple through every single corner of our province. The loss of local newspapers isn't just the end of business, it's the end of an era. In many ways, these newspapers have been the heartbeats of our communities, and I'm sure we can all relate. The loss of these papers leave behind a gaping hole. Local news are the chroniclers of our lives, from births to weddings, events to sporting victories, celebrations to scandals. They have been there for all, telling vital stories, holding governments accountable, and providing new perspectives to each of our unique communities. I'm sure here in this House and across the province, you can all remember the first time that you saw yourself in the newspaper, whether it was from a sport victory, a science fair, art gallery, spelling bee or community fair, or high school graduation. There was a special excitement about getting your photo in the newspaper, and it gave you a real sense of belonging in your community. And I'll tell you, nothing brings a bigger smile to a grandparent's face the first time that they get their grandchild's photo from the newspaper and they can hang it up on the fridge. And I'm sure everyone can agree with that. I can remember the excitement myself when I saw my son and my daughter appear in the newspaper for their very first time. I worry about how local news will be covered in the wake of these closures. Who will tell the local stories? Without them, voices will go unheard and these connections will be weakened. As the president of the Community Media Division at Glacier Media Group, Peter Kvarnstorm wrote about my local media is, and I quote, leaving a large gap in the local media landscape in a vast region that offers views itself as both politically and economically separate from the rest of the province will be at risk, unquote. Quite frankly, Honourable Speaker, at times I felt like your local newspaper was the only place where the specific day-to-day needs of your community could be heard and cared about. How often do people in Chetwynd or Fort St. James or Taylor, Rose Prairie, Fort Nelson for that matter, hear the concerns of their communities written about in major newspapers? I can tell you probably almost none. As the world has embraced technology and social media, these papers were forced to adapt into the digital world. While it has had its challenges, newspapers were able to expand their audiences and served as connection point for many people that had left their towns. They could open up their social media and be informed of the news of their hometown, allowing them to feel as if they were still part of the community, keeping a piece of them at home. Doesn't matter where life took them. And I recently talked to the editor of the Alaska Highway News. A huge amount of their readership was people that did not live in Fort St. John, but have throughout their life called Fort St. John or the region their home. It is unfortunate, Honourable Speaker, that circumstances outside of their control are leading to the decline of these local newspapers. The increased market for online content forced papers to change their business models as they heavily relied on advertising revenue from digital platforms such as Facebook or Google. These business models are no longer viable now. And in the case of Kamloops this week, their website had fallen by half after the news that they could no longer appear on Meta. The cost to keep newspapers afloat has risen, and now the blocking of their content on certain platforms has now, as we've seen, proven completely detrimental to the ones that have already closed and puts the risk of the future of all local media at jeopardy in British Columbia and across the country. The devastating impacts of the trend of local newspapers shutting down in British Columbia is not to be underestimated. We stand to lose a vital source of information and a cornerstone of each and every one of our communities. Wherever possible, we must step up to support local newspapers and local journalists who keep our communities connected and informed. Rural residents from smaller towns and cities deserve to have a platform, to have their voices heard, their concerns expressed. And today, I really do want to convey my gratitude to all of these outlets that have loyally served the Peace region and other regions across the province that have lost their newspapers. Thank you for the work and your outstanding contributions that you have made to each and every one of your communities. Thanks, Honourable Speaker.
Thank you, Member.